Hi, Meredith. Welcome.
Hello, you again.
Nice to see you. We just went over a wonderful introduction of your session and the brief bio and background on your impressive 30-year career in the insurance industry. And our delegates are now eagerly awaiting your presentation on eliminating the trade-offs between improving customer experience, operational expenses, and the employee experience. So I will take my leave and leave it to you.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon to all from wherever you are. We're here to talk about and not just the great idea to really think about digital transformation from a different perspective of thinking about optimizing customer experience, employee experience, and operational expense simultaneously. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And we're going to talk a bit here about why it's so important. And then we're going to talk about that. Then how do you do it? How do you do it? And I'll give you some examples on how that's worked. If we go to the next slide. So a little bit of context. I think you've heard a little bit about my background. I couldn't find a good graphic of a jungle gym because that's really what I think my career has been thus far. But I've spent more than 30 years in the industry, starting from working at an agency when I was in college. Had a really incredible 33 years at Liberty Mutual, where I had an opportunity to work across the entire insurance life cycle, from claims, policy underwriting, managed care, contact center, loss prevention, risk control, and working it from a service operations and the business side of technology, which ranged from the big core system endeavors that many on this meeting have been part of, but also what I was really great passion with was the day-to-day, the lights on things, all of the interactions and activities that were critical to ensure that the business could run and customers were happy. If we go to the next slide. So a little bit of an introduction about Ushur. Ushur is a Silicon-based customer experience automation platform, or the world's first purpose-built, fully targeted in on the insurance industry. And what we're enabling insurance carriers, including health plans, is to optimize and automate their customer interactions, what we call micro engagement at a time. When that customer reaches in with that quick question, to make it really easy for them to get that quick answer. And conversely, when the insurance company needs to ask for information or share information with a customer, making that easy for the carrier to do and easier for the customer to receive and respond. And we have some tremendous brands as part of our customer family already. Many of them you will obviously recognize, and we're working with them across the full insurance relationship, from their interactions with agents, with brokers, with policyholders, members in the group benefits context, and across claim experiences, policy, product, open enrollment. There's no area of the insurance journey that at this point that we're not involved in that automation. So if we go to the next slide, please. So as we go here, and there's some transitions on this page, we are an omnichannel solution that enables insurance companies to meet their customers and those other key stakeholders where they are when they're there. And Amit, if you could just click through on those other slides, please, those other buttons, please. And so it really enables to offer that secure customer experience from a phone, from a tablet, from a laptop, from a desktop computer, but also enabling those interactions to happen through texting. They could be happening through various chat and other mobile messaging applications. They could be happening through email, and can also be a conversation that begins from a phone call. And giving, again, customers the nice option, not the old press 20 to talk to the jewelry department, but that nice way to have options to pivot from, no, instead of talking to a contact center rep, it's a quick question. If you can allow me to get a quick answer right here, right now, I'll jump out into that self-service path. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is how we think about this digital transformation. And we've come up with this triangle where we think about the three sides. We kind of riffed off of that traditional scope, schedule, budget, project management triangle that many of us are accustomed to, where one side of the triangle had to be fixed and the other two had to flex. And the flexing invariably, would so often be the operational effectiveness, that expense piece, which also became an employee engagement piece as we tried to figure out how to put more manual back end steps in there to preserve that customer automation, what I call that digital on the front end only, that winds up eventually disappointing the customer when they figure out it's really not an end-to-end digital experience. And what I've learned through my journey in the industry and now my time at Ushur is it really is possible by taking this agile one micro engagement at a time approach. It truly is possible to make ground, one interaction at a time, to start truly transforming that experience one bite at a time and keep on going. Next slide, please. So, I mean, I'll let you kind of just click through all the transitions to fill out this slide, but this is a view, this is a generalized view of the property and casualty insurance segment, for example. And, there's many key known stakeholders. There's the policyholder, of course. There may be an agent or a broker. There can be an employee, perhaps a claimant. And then, of course, you have all the providers, and often those are members of your insurance company's provider network, and those are critical to the claim experience, the claim process, and maybe get involved in loss prevention activities. And across these various journeys, those chevrons at the bottom, that's what we really talk about. There's these major journeys of a relationship. And in some instances, say from a personalized perspective and even a small commercial point of view, it might literally be the same customer representative interacting with the carrier from that marketing of, hey, you getting that pitch as a prospect, to going through that quoting experience, deciding to buy and becoming a policyholder, needing to, of course, pay their bills and go through the billing journey, but then maybe unfortunately also having a claim experience. And the reality is, just like in a retail context, if you put it in your context of when you go shopping at the infamous Amazon, you expect it to be a consistent experience end to end. That's what customers are expecting of their insurance company. They're expecting, once I know how to interact with you, starting, say, with that marketing moment, it should feel the same throughout that full life cycle, circling all the way back to renewal. There shouldn't be a silo in a journey to go through the quoting process, which looks and feels very much like when I'm managing and maintaining my policy, and the billing piece is a separate interaction over here. And then, oh my goodness, the claim journey that may be different by line of business even. That's still an inside out, unintended, but that's an inside out approach that is often driven by the well-intended but fraught with challenges approach of taking internally core-facing systems that there are many, there are multiple, and they are different, and as they should be. I don't know if I've met a larger insurance carrier that said, my underwriter needs to have the exact same user experience that my claims adjuster has. They're different roles of different people, and that wouldn't be a key imperative you would generally think you'd invest in unless you truly are an organization where the same person is doing that work, and that common experience would be important. So when you have those different internally facing systems and use as your proxy to push out to create those digital interactions, those self-service experiences, both when the carrier pushes out or when the customer reaches in, you're externalizing the internal differences. And the internal differences make complete business sense, but they definitely do not make sense to a customer. And I just say, apply that online retail experience and think about what if when you went shopping online, you had the shopping cart, but then when you decided to buy, that whole experience suddenly looked and felt differently, and maybe you had to redo and recant some information. And then when you went to buy the purchasing, that was a whole different piece of the puzzle. And then you sat and waited for a day or so of, why didn't I get an immediate confirmation? And oh my goodness, do I need to cancel my credit card? It's those experiences, those fractured moments, unintended, that really create customer friction and concern. So if we go to the next slide, and then we can pivot right through. So we've been talking about that customer experience and customer expectations, and you can flip through the transitions here. Customer expectations are very reasonable, and they're very, like all of us have, right? Is I want it one and done. When I have something, instant gratification, immediate need, I have a need, I want it satisfied, I want it to done. And companies on the left, to some degree, feel they're getting there. I wouldn't necessarily put, big fireworks on 54%, but they think they're okay in that regard, or making progress. But unfortunately, to the right, the customers say not so fast. It's not working really quite that well, guys. It's taking us a lot more tries. And in all fairness to the companies, if anybody's tried to do this, it can be really, really hard to track those multiple interactions and say, oh, those 3 phone calls were all tied to the exact same service request, that same initial in-reach or outreach. And that email and maybe that text message, that's all the same thing. And now we can find the 4 or 5 that total up to what the customer felt. It's hard. We can go to the next slide, please. So what are customers expecting? Customers are expecting most of the time that they're going to be having interactions without a person involved. And that's not a non-empathetic thing. That's not a bad thing. One of my favorite analysts said, respecting someone's time is a sincere sign of empathy. And time is part of when it's convenient for me. And a phone call is not necessarily convenient for me, but being able to trigger that interaction, through a text engagement or through an email interaction tonight might be convenient for me. Or when I need to provide information, Yeah, I may not have it now. So, but if you reach out to me digitally when I get home and can pull up my paperwork and find what you need, then I can get it to you versus this voicemail tag, you're it type of thing that can cause so much expense and frustration. And the key is almost 2/3 of the time, if digital self-service is offered, regardless of age, people are going to pick it first. So it's not a bad thing. People want it. And I think that number is going to keep going up. And it's no longer just for younger people. The senior community has become more and more gone from digital resistant to digital tolerant to digital accepting to some becoming now like digital native, digital embracing. And the pandemic clearly, the lockdown clearly forced that hand for many because everybody of every age needed to figure out how to operate without leaving their homes. And digital was how that was going to happen. We can go to the next slide. So as we look at this, mobile apps were absolutely a pivotal part of the transformation of the customer experience across any industry, including insurance. No question. I was involved in them and they were phenomenal. But time has moved on, expectations have moved on. And now it's at a point of everybody's expectations have become more sophisticated. We expect more for less. We expect it to be easier. And candidly, it should be. The things are modernizing. So a mobile app can become a tremendous source of friction. If I have to download, create credentials, log in, search and navigate. I just had a question. I just needed a quick piece of information, or you needed to share something with me. Why do I have to do the whole thing? It's starting to feel like this is unintentionally more convenient for the carrier than it is for what works for me. And digital apps are expensive. The mobile apps are expensive. They just are. You've got the multiple platforms, the multiple versions, the traditional, deployment and development cycles and all of those things and support. So they just are. And hey, they were great at a point in time and time has moved on. And people are moving into these other areas, including things like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger that used to be where people were having person to person, family and friend interactions. And those have now pivoted from being not just a hot space for B2C interactions, but also for B2B, especially in an increasingly no boundaries international world. And when you don't figure out how to satisfy those requests on that first pass, you're going to get into that very expensive and very custom frictionful experience of channel hopping, where the customer has to keep starting over and moving from, well, I tried that digital experience. I tried it, which is also for the carrier would be the least operating expense opportunity and the least customer friction or employee friction moment. I tried, it didn't work. So I had to call someone and then that didn't work. And so I need to reach someone else and then that didn't work. And that's insanely expensive and very frictionful. And as I mentioned, hard to necessarily detect that this is even going on when somebody, talks to the contact center and then later calls their underwriter and then maybe talks to the underwriting assistant and then maybe goes back to the contact center because they just need to add a driver to their policy. I had a colleague who went through this year and it took her almost a week and it almost cost her carrier, who she'd been with for over 20 years, because it was just such a bounce around. She said she probably spent 4 or 5 hours just trying to shuttle through what should have been a simple opportunity. So if you go to the next slide, so now we're heading into the operational expense. So the insurance industry is under tremendous pressure. Unlike other industries like auto and telecommunications that have been just constantly drilling down of how do we keep shifting left? How do we keep putting more and more self-service capabilities in the hands of our customers and let them? I remember the first time when I was having a problem with my Fios mobile at home and I hit this, would you like to troubleshoot? I'm like, oh, sure, why not? I'm always curious about how that works. And it was this cool animated process where it was going through and checking all my signals and connections and then eventually resetting my router. And I said, I bet dollars to donuts. That used to be the tool that their internal tech help used when I would engage them through a phone or through a chat. And they were doing that behind the scenes. And they figured, let's experiment, let's push it out and see if customers would like to do it themselves. And it was great. And it was immediate and I got immediate feedback. I was able to solve my problem and I thought, thank you very much. You saved me a lot of time and I got my problem solved. So we go to the next slide, please. And while that slide was showing, the P&C challenges of costs that are going up while other industries are going down, not just staying flat, it's not just a P&C challenge. You can see this other study by McKinsey. It's a challenge, for example, for the life insurance industry also. And so really this is all the signals that from an operating expense perspective, something absolutely has to give. And it can't be customer experience and it can't be employee experience because that's a significant driver of operational cost. If we go to the next. And you can transition on both of those, please. And so this is a high level, again, another view from McKinsey of all the various pressure points that are on carriers that are coming through from technology, catastrophes, right? Everybody holds their breath until hurricane season is officially over and then go, yeah, but now we're in the blizzard season. And then here come the tornadoes. There's really no good time of the year while we're not monitoring for cats and wondering, how if our modeling got it right. Data analytics is a huge pressure point of the need to be able to compete and provide more and more capabilities through that, but that involves investment. Reshape distribution, more and more players are coming in and trying to be part of the distribution story and provide more of those point of sale, great customer experience moments, but as part of that, chipping away and eating away at insurance carriers' profits. And we've talked before about the cost reduction, about the need for efficiency and talent. Talent is a huge pressure point, including in this world of continuous change and the shifting experiences and expectations. Taking that really, really powerful talent, you have to keep retransforming them and leveraging that talent in different ways. But if we go to the next slide and then click on through, the challenge is the great resignation. People are leaving and leaving in highness. And I recently read a report that actually the great resignation actually began before the pandemic, which was surprised me, but people are leaving in droves. And it's really hard to retain compared just to this year versus last year. The difficulty of holding on to that talent is astronomical. And any of us who've been involved in the hiring process, wow, it's way harder, as I'd say in New England, wicked harder than it ever used to be to get the people you want. And everybody thinks this is not a problem that's going away anytime soon. So the people you've got to really think about. It's not just attracting people with the best compensation and great benefits. Employees are looking for the experience of, what does my job look like? How hard or easy is my job? Is technology being invested in me and how I deliver service in a way that I think is reasonable? Because I too am a consumer in real life and have those same expectations that our customers have. You can go to the next slide, please. So we've got aging population. We're losing a lot of people, and we're losing a lot of people from the insurance industry. At the same time, we have a workforce that is looking different with different expectations. And those expectations, again, they expect, as consumers in their real lives, as employees, they expect technology to be not just doing basic block and tackling. They expect it to be digging deep and solving more complex issues. And they are expecting just like they expect to be and prefer to interact digitally with their insurance companies. That's what they expect their job to reflect, that they shouldn't be doing the things that automation should be taking care of with their customers. And it's a really expensive proposition to be having to go through the hiring journey. And it's really a challenging if you have that retention challenge and the person comes in and says, my employee experience of how automation makes my job easier and better, it's not there. That becomes that employee friction point, and that's what drives the retention problem. So what do we do about it? Oh my goodness, this is so crazy. So what do we need to do is we need to think about doing things completely different. We need for a moment to forget how we used to do things and eliminate all the muscle memory of how we've driven change in this all or nothing process, end-to-end continuum, value streams, and all those types of things. And we need to really understand our customer experience at that micro engagement, that interaction level, both inbound and outbound. We need to get their feedback about both from customers as well as from your employees. Amazing what they know about what's working well. And why is that important? What's working well that's an indication of what your customers love. That's the indication. Those are the examples of the experiences that your customers want to have. Grab onto that, document that, understand it, and then look at the areas where you're going to hit your opportunities and say, how can we offer a consistent customer experience for that interaction? You also want to know those are the things that are not broken, therefore should not be fixed. Do not throw out the baby with the bathwater and every other analogy. Don't do it. Don't get tempted. Don't do it. Leave what they love as it is. Chip away at the things that they love less. Get that voice of the customer, including looking at, if you have mobile apps, take a look at the app play in the Google store and look for the comments to see what people think. Talk to your employees of what are those high volume critical things that you know you need to do, and you really scratch your head and say, I have no idea why a person is still doing this in this day and age. Your employee expectations are very, very valuable. They know where they are inadvertently part of the problem when they would prefer to be part of the solution. Look at your inbound data and your outbound data of your high volume. Find your top three. Dollars to donuts, claim status is somewhere in there on the inbound, and reaching out for asking for updates, asking for information is definitely in your outbound. And also look for where you're not achieving key goals. For example, are you seeing the provider network utilization that you need and want? Do you have your e-payment adoption at where it should be in this day and age, which should be a huge customer convenience and as well as a huge carrier savings, but it isn't if it's really difficult for somebody to sign up. But this is just, I showed you that property and casualty view of all those different journeys and micro engagements. It exists for life and accident. We have a similar view for healthcare. There is no shortage of high volume, critical, predictable interactions, micro engagements when someone is reaching in or the insurance company is reaching out that are huge opportunities to automation to drive improvement on your customer experience, on your employee experience, and on your operational expense. So as I mentioned before, you want to find those points of friction. You want to get to that most discrete interaction. You want to look at that future state and say, I intend to optimize on all three. And if you come up with a solution that is not doing that, is not improving all three sides of that triangle, go back again. You may not be at the micro engagement level. You may be still have multiple pieces that you're still traditionally thinking, well, these things go together. I got it. But in a conversation of the in versus the out, those are two distinct micro engagements, and you should think about them as such and not try to keep making them harder than it has to be to start making change. And keep going back and keep trying until you get to that solution that really hits on that. It's really kind of an iterative, agile problem solving moment. And I'll wrap up very quickly on the next slides with a few examples. Example of claim status. One of our customers, and they couldn't keep up with the phone calls, a lot of friction, a lot of employee time and effort on the outbounds and the voicemail tag. They opted in for proactive updates, send those out to customers. So many of them opted in. They got tremendous lift on their customer satisfaction. They immediately saw a 35% reduction in their inbound calls, which in creating a digital option to answer a question is great. But transformation is when you eliminate the need for the customer to call at all. The best question is the one that is answered before it's asked. And you have the data to know what those opportunities are. You really do. And you're freeing up your people to be focusing on the things where they bring the most value. And by the way, they're developing as people and they can see they're creating their career path. Customer email, something that you can't keep up, and it's never going away, by the way. A recent survey by Aetna said that younger agents still see it as one of their preferred interaction channels with carriers, so it's not going away. But this was a situation, it was over a day and 3 different people touching each piece of email just to get it to the right person, to put it in the right hands, and putting some automation in place to automate that triaging took that from a 27-hour journey to a 6-second journey, take that to costing over $3 to less than 50 cents. And again, think about the employee experience. The people who no longer have to be doing all that block and tackling on email, and instead could be focusing on ramping up their skills and experience to be those people that actually work on providing the service. And the last example was premium payments. Again, employees block and tackling, following up for late payments, all the outreach, definitely an expensive, time consuming, but critical process because late payments eventually lead to cancellations, and that's a whole other source of customer friction and concern. And so they automated proactive payment reminders, huge opt-in, huge acceleration on on-time payments, massive financial lift in terms of their monthly receivables. And again, what employee does not, say, I do not miss needing to make those outbound outreaches to chase people down to be paying for their insurance. Do we have any questions that have come in from the group?
None yet, Meredith, but as always, your presentation, regardless of not being able to physically see you, was captivating, especially the infographics that you shared and really pairing into your case studies, the business case for all of this. When you see the metrics being applied, what's measured matters. And you've certainly outlined the business case for where all of these improvements, whether on the customer end, the operations end, or the employee engagement experience end, can really come to alignment. With that, we'll give it maybe a minute or so to see if any questions come through from the Q&A Slack channel, so to speak. But in the interim, I wanted to thank you once again for this very captivating presentation. And we're looking forward to your participation in the panel discussion tomorrow as well. So appreciate your sharing your time and your experience with us today. And with that, are there other relevant case studies that maybe exist on the Ushur website, or perhaps the contact information that you've provided on your presentation? People can reach out to you if there's any questions, or they're looking for more succinct examples of how they can leverage Ushur as a tool into accelerating their employee, customer, and operational acceleration in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, our website, we have absolutely a whole myriad of case studies. We also have quite a few kind of one-page, kind of more anonymized case studies, again, that talk about all these critical interactions. So it could be, for example, in the healthcare side, primary care physician, getting somebody in network. And again, the metrics of why that is so important. And it's not hard. It's about catching that member where they are to say, hey, did you know that, that we have these great doctors for you, and we want you, and here's how you find them, and making it really easy for them to find the one they want, create that connection, and set up that appointment. Again, it almost feels like a retail journey to some extent. And we have an article on there. And there's one that I'm insanely passionate about as a workers' compensation claims adjuster by my original insurance DNA, where that workers' compensation claim comes in from the employer. The key person that needs to be engaged is the injured worker, who by no means understands the claims process. Only a claims person understands the claims process. And in my day, it was critical for us to reach that person within that first 24 hours. And if I couldn't get them by phone, which invariably back in the day, I couldn't, and that was my only option, of course, pre-email and pre-anything else, I would get in my car and show up at their house, because it was critical for them to know I was here, to explain how the claim process was going to work. I needed a medical authorization signed. And, and happy adjusters showing up on the doorstep, no matter how wonderful my intentions were, was not necessarily the great way to start off an empathetic relationship, because it felt invasive to that injured worker, regardless of what my intentions were. And so that's one of the use cases I'm really, really excited about, is that ability of when that workers' compensation first report hits, no matter how it comes in, to be able to immediately reach out to that injured worker and say, we're here, we've got you. And let us educate you to understand the claim process, the benefits. Let's get your medical authorization e-signed super, super fast. You want to schedule a call to talk to your adjuster if you have questions, but we're going to give you ultimate transparency at the very beginning and stay connected with you throughout it all. And so you won't be sitting at home wondering what happens next, what's needed for me, what do I do? Do I need to get an attorney?
Absolutely, Meredith. And I think you hit the nail on the head with respect to the shifting expectations, not just from a consumer, but an employee perspective as well. And I mean, when you use claims as the example, the promise of insurance, regardless of what type of policy you've purchased, creating that visibility and transparency so the insured can participate on the journey, where they're less likely to feel that the entire process is myriad behind cloak and dagger, and that they're not going to necessarily receive not only a favorable claims experience, but potentially a policy denial. Just creating that linkage and that visibility, I'm sure, has created a greater customer experience that's likely been rewarded with retention for the carriers that are looking at these digital first tools, and notwithstanding the employee engagement that gets improved upon because you've taken the automation element to all of this process and really shifted the lens in the sense of how the industry can respond and how we can create a more favorable outcome, whether on the life and health or the property and casualty side. So really, really appreciate all of the insights that you shared with us today. And with that, your presentation, Meredith, actually concludes day 1 of 2 of the Insurance Tech Virtual Conference. And through your presentation, we've come full circle from looking primarily at the outlook of the future of insurance, looking towards 2030, digitization and the customer experience in the new normal, and understanding how customer experience and digitization are two sides of the same coin. From there, we navigated towards data trends, whether it's data trends from a marketing standpoint, marketing and automation, or data trends from a solution provider standpoint, and understanding how CETA was showing us how they were automating the loss delay detection claims validation process. We then engaged with a panel discussion reimagining the future of insurance from a direct writer, reinsurer, primary carrier, and brokerage standpoint, and understood more about unlocking the transformation experience for personal lines coverage in home and auto. So appreciate everything you brought to the table today with this eliminating trade-offs discussion, and certainly the consideration all of us working in the insurance ecosystem really need to consider as the great resignation befalls our entire industry, and understanding that technology is not necessarily just a tool for us to attract and retain our customers, but primarily the people we need to take care of are people in the industry who will help ensure that we're meeting those promises. So thank you again, Meredith, for your time, and I'm looking forward to our discussion tomorrow. And with that, thank you to all of our delegates and attendees today for joining us on day one of the Insurance Tech Virtual Conference. The networking lounge is still open for those who are interested in continuing the dialogue and meeting some of the speakers and solution providers who are on our platform today. Otherwise, we will look forward to meeting with you again first thing tomorrow morning for another engaging half-day session, starting with our 8:35 with opening remarks in our first panel on technology disruption within the insurance sector. So thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever in the world you're joining us from, and look forward to continuing our learning tomorrow as well. Thank you.